And so earlier yesterday, we did get our news post in regards to the next Limit Breaker quest coming out a day early than usual. This is actually releasing the same day the end of month banner, which also got announced this morning, releases. Usually, it's the first of any month. But this Limit Breaker in particular is working a lot different when compared to past Limit Breaker quests. And honestly, it's a somewhat welcome change. The first thing you'll notice right from the get-go is that the banner icon itself is different. This time around, there's only Quincy enemies, and that's the specialty, I guess, about this Limit Breaker quest, is that we are strictly going against Quincy enemies. Alongside that, you might have noticed, there's also now only a 2-minute timer instead of the usual 5 minutes. Now, instantly, people saw that and started jumping the gun and assuming the worst. But if you actually go ahead and scroll up here, KLab themselves do explain why they have done this. And the reason is fairly simple. And again, I would like to say welcomed. So this special Limit Breaker quest will only feature Quincy enemies. Also, it's now open to anyone rank 30 or above. Previously, you had to be rank 50. Previously, I believe you had to have level 15 link shots, maybe level 20, I'm not sure what the number was, but you had to have a certain link shot level. Now, there are no link shot restrictions. The reason for that is because it's going to be a beginner-friendly Limit Breaker quest. And alongside that, they've also made this quest easier than normal in order to give players who haven't played Limit Breaker quest before the chance to try out the game modes. Now, there are a few caveats with that too. For this reason, as stated here, the badges are awarded for reaching the maximum number of stages. So let's say, for example, bronze, gold, and also rainbow, they're not going to be on their usual levels, right? So for example, in the old normal Limit Breaker quest, if you got to stage 20, you would get a rainbow badge. In this Limit Breaker quest, if you get to stage 20, it might just be a gold because obviously it's going to be a lot easier. And they also do specify here that any special achievement towards Limit Breaker would not be counted because obviously this is like a beginner-friendly one. Alongside that too, the rules themselves, while they are still relevant, you definitely want to try and follow them. It's literally just range and also melee damage. This therefore means you can generally bring any character you want to, assuming they meet the requirement of being a melee character or a range character. And to be fair, maybe you don't even need to do that. But in terms of characters that we can bring, well, let's quickly talk about those. So first up, slot 1 wants us to bring a heart character that is a range character. If we do want to follow the killer aspect, if we sort by Quincy Killer, this is what you are going to get. So obviously, this isn't designed for the newly released human killer Retsu. Slot 1 really wants you to bring the new 1000G Blood Byakuya who was announced today. He doesn't have Quincy Killer, and again, if you look at the rules, killer really doesn't matter. If you have killer, it's even better. You're doing 20% more damage, sometimes 40% assuming they have killer plus. But as long as they're a range character, that's all that really matters. So in this case, let's take off the Quincy Killer and now look at our best heart range characters. And I feel like everyone's go-to for anyone that isn't pulling on the new Byakuya, we of course have access to Toshiro. Toshiro is an amazing character. Most people pulled on the part 2 of the anniversary, right? If you have this character, he's going to be good enough. In his case too, since there are Quincy enemies, while he doesn't have killer, he will have his increased chance to inflict status elements, therefore allowing him to get that 140% more damage to frozen enemies, and also ensure that he basically keeps his spiritual pressure boost. Remember, like I said, like this can be super easy. We don't need to like go into great detail about best characters to pick. This, more than ever, is the first Limit Breaker quest you actually can just bring any character you want. And with that in mind, I might be trying out a lot of different characters, just seeing how far they can go. And I honestly do welcome this change. Would love to see it more often, maybe alongside a difficult one. Like stepping away from the character aspect real quick, I would love like permanent Limit Breaker challenges. Multiple, sometimes going on at the same time, like a beginner's friendly one, even challenging one every month, maybe every 2 weeks would actually be really fun. And maybe we are getting that, by the way. No guarantee this does happen, but in the Byakuya showcase, they actually do show a Limit Breaker quest that isn't the one we are getting this upcoming Monday. So maybe we are going to get another Limit Breaker quest, this time more so for Byakuya and maybe 2 other characters. And that's going to be our usual high difficult Limit Breaker quest. If your goal, even though this is going to be a easy Limit Breaker quest, is to take it as far as you possibly can in those 2 minutes, then Toshiro is probably going to be everyone's go-to character if you don't pull Byakuya. And who actually knows? To be fair, Toshiro is likely to even be better than Byakuya, because Byakuya's increased chance, despite him being a great character, obviously, is only to humans, and we aren't up against humans. So, if anything, I would probably say Toshiro is going to be best in slot 1. Another good character you can bring here is, of course, going to be Ririka. She was on the 9th anniversary part 1 banner. Maybe you have her duplicated. She's surprisingly been quite useful in Limit Breaker, and in her case, her damage output's good. She buffs the team's strong attack damage. She can also heal the team. She's going to be a relatively good character. She's ranged, she meets the bill. Honestly good enough to bring here. Other than that though, as far as ranged heart characters do go, they're probably the 2 best ones. Third one, of course, being Byakuya. Like I mentioned, given the fact that this is going to be easier than usual, you really can't just bring any character here. If you wanted to bring Noelle, Rangiku, 6th anniversary Aizen, you really can do that. We're not going to highlight them, but let me look at some potential Quincy killers that are melee. Are there any good ones? Not so much. I mean, Noritoro is good, but at that point, you're probably just better off bringing a ranged character. For slot 2, we want to bring a mind Quincy killer. This time, we want them to be a melee character. And in that case, Ishin is going to be best in slot for slot 2. I don't think there's going to be any other better character than him. Rampage, high damage output. He's a melee character, so he's getting that 2 times damage output. And he also has killer. If you have Ishin, I would definitely put him in slot number 2. Of course, though, as always, if Ishin is usable in a Limit Breaker quest, that also therefore means that Lisa is also going to be usable. She's worse than Ishin. Ishin is significantly better, but Lisa is also a melee mind character with Quincy Killer, and therefore she will be usable. She's a premium character, so you might have her duped out. I myself, for example, have her max transcended, and she would, of course, be good in slot number 2. That's it for our Quincy killers. So again, let's not look at Quincy killers. In this case, bring any good mind character. And in that case, what you can actually do is bring Yuha. Now, one thing that's worth mentioning, right, in this particular quest is that because the timer is only a 2-minute countdown, you want to be as fast as possible. Long stride is going to be a must. And with that, we're also preferably going to want to have some type of way to recharge your strong attacks in between stages. So if you don't have Ishin, maybe even if you do have Ishin, Yuha might be a character you want to bring in slot 2, just to make sure you have 1, maybe 2 characters, depending on the other character you are using in slot 1 and 3, to give you that recharge in between stages, just so you can spam your strong attacks every single time. There are still going to be poised enemies in this upcoming Limit Breaker quest, but their HP is going to be significantly lowered. You're still going to spend a tad bit of extra time on those poised enemy stages when compared to the normal ones, like always, but you won't be in a poised enemy stage for longer than a minute, like the current normal Limit Breaker quest. So Yuha, even though he doesn't have killer here, like I mentioned multiple times now, it's not important, might be a character worth bringing just for that recharge in between stages. Other characters you can bring at this point, just bring general good SP units that you have worked on. Basically, this Limit Breaker quest is bring your best mind, power, and also heart character. If one of those characters is white, for example, he's definitely worth bringing. One thing that is maybe worth mentioning for slot 1, 2, and also 3, let's say you just have like no good character. You can always just bring your next best character that has maybe killer. So let's say, for example, for slot 2, we want to bring a melee character with Quincy Killer. To be fair, the options don't open up that much, but you could just bring Ichibei in slot 2 if you really wanted to. Might be usable if you have like no other better option. Or you can just bring any melee character. Of course, I would recommend trying to have killer. Most importantly, have attribute advantage. But if you have like a really good max transcended character, like for example, the most recent Oetsu, maybe fitting him into any slot 1, 2, or 3, more so slot 1 and 2 where he won't have attribute disadvantage, might be worth trying. Again, given the fact that it's going to be easier, you really can just be flexible with your options here. And then last but not least, slot number 3 wants to bring a power character with Quincy Killer, and we also want them to be melee. So main character everyone's going to use there is Yamamoto. Yama, of course, is still a great character. I have him max transcended, so I'm sure he's going to be hitting like an absolute truck in this particular quest. He's getting that 2 times damage output. He has killer. He has attribute advantage. Going to be really good in slot number 3. Don't have Yama? Well, lucky for us, we can basically just bring any power melee character. And lucky for us, we've gotten 2 really good ones in the last few months. I would say they're probably like the only 2 characters I would really recommend bringing, just to go as far as you possibly can. Like if your goal is just to get a gold badge, maybe get all the rewards, you can probably get away using other characters like maybe 5th anniversary Ichigo. Maybe I'm exaggerating there a tad bit, but you know, you don't have to bring like meta-defining characters like usually you do in any other Limit Breaker quest. But yeah, obviously Mugetsu is going to be really good here. He also does have that 20% strong attack damage soul trait that he will give to every character in your team. That's going to allow them to do 20% more damage, and that can be good when you only have a 2-minute countdown. He's immune to every star summon. He's a fast character. He can inflict weakening. He won't have an increased chance against his enemies, so that's something to keep in mind, but maybe it's still worth bringing. Again, if you have no better option, I would like to think you have Mugetsu. If you started before the 9th anniversary, you should have him because he was guaranteed in just 2,000 orbs. Maybe, however, your best character in slot 3 is going to be Soifon. Like I mentioned, because you have a 2-minute countdown, you want to be as fast as possible, and with that in mind, having a way to recharge your strong attacks in between stages is going to be really, really good. And Soifon, as of right now, is the only character in the game to offer that to every single character, regardless of their attribute or affiliation. So even though Soifon, like with Mugetsu, won't have an increased chance to inflict status limits, because she only has it against humans, she won't have Killer, and Guard Break might be a tad bit annoying in this quest, her damage output's still going to be good as is. She's also boosting your team's stats, allowing them to clear their stages faster, but it just most importantly makes it so they can spam their strong attacks every time they're next available. And with that, that might be how you're going to get as far as possible in this somewhat easy Limit Breaker quest. I feel like right now the best team might be Toshiro, Ishin, and then also Soifon. If, however, the recharge in between stages that we do get from Soifon isn't worth bringing, well then you're probably just better bringing Yamamoto. That would likely be the best team. But you know what? Honestly, don't stress about it. I would recommend, most importantly, to just bring your favorite characters. I'm going to try out a lot of different combinations because I just like the idea of this. I honestly would welcome this a lot more often. Having Limit Breaker quests active more than once a month would be really cool. And I like the idea of having an easy one where I really can almost just bring any character I want to and maybe get really far. So yeah, this is actually really cool, especially for, again, those new players that have yet to tackle this game mode. Now would be a great time to do so. And I'm curious to see how it is going to play out. I guess one cool thing that I'm looking forward to this Limit Breaker quest is that because we are going against Quincy's, we are going to be in the 1000-Year Blood War map. And I really do like that map, by the way. And the only time we ever really get to see it is when we are up against Quincy's. So yeah, I kind of hope they do this more often. It's always cool seeing them change up Limit Breaker quests. It hasn't stayed the same since it has been introduced. And I'm curious to see how far we can potentially get in this beginner welcomed Limit Breaker quest. Let me know your team in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care and peace.